Well, the international, or the,
That was the beauty of them having a major label at that time. If you had a Neil Diamond or you had a Michael or me, I mean, back then there was no internet communication. So we had, what was it, a telex machine or something? With telex, the tours to these European companies. And if it were a Springsteen or something, I've always felt that if it weren't for CBS, now Sony distribution, Springsteen would have never been able to fill 3 nights at a stadium in Finland.
Right.
I mean, you know, we can talk how great indie labels are great and they're a wonderful source of new music and all, but that major label distribution with all the faults, especially in the accounting departments, all the faults were overcome with the power that those individual countries had to break people through in those countries, I think, you know.
now, I want to hit on a subject with Stess, and it, you know, artists come in, we build them up, we make them, you know, at least we felt we built them up, and their music built them up, their stardom built them up. Artists become very powerful, and Larry had a very sensitive situation happen. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I was telling you about the pool table. I went over to I was playing softball. I broke my ankle, and got it set. And the next day, I'm taking Darvon. I'm on crutches, and they said, "Well, you got to go over to the recording studio and see Michael and the Jacksons and show them the artwork for the new album, and you also have to show Michael this ad that we're going to run in the trade magazines to announce that Off the Wall it sold 5 million copies." So they gave me the artwork, and I drive over to the recording studio, and don't drive on drugs. And
They don't know what a trade magazine is.
you know, an industry publication called Billboard Magazine, which a lot of people probably know about.
Used to be able to buy it.
So I went over to the recording studio, and I hobble up to the second floor with my crutches, and you know, it's just a long day, and I put these photographs out on the pool table, and the Jacksons come in, and we're talking, and they hate these photographs. So I said, well, your album cover is somewhere on this pool table, so you better find it, in a nice way. And Michael finally, you know, again, this is Michael, he just stood there and he went, take this photograph and flip it. I don't want to be on the right side, I want to be on the left side. So we just went, you know, you take the negative, you just turn it over and you print it. I said, okay, I'll talk to the art department, we'll flip it over, I'll bring it back over to you for approval. So the brothers leave. I said, Michael, I need to show you something else. So I show him this 2-page, 4-color ad that we were going to run in Billboard magazine to announce that Off the Wall it sold 5 million copies, and it's basically a takeoff. It's another photograph that was used for the Off the Wall sessions. And his hairline, you know, with African Americans, their hair kind of comes down a little bit over their forehead like this instead of brushed completely back. But the art department had airbrushed it out, or you know, photoshopped it out in those days. So they took it out, and he looked at it, and he went, "You retouched this photograph." And I said, "I'm not sure what you mean." He goes, "My hairline is weird." He said, "It just doesn't look right. You we used to call the airbrush." He said, "You airbrushed out part of my forehead." I said, "Well, I'm sure they felt it, it looked messy or whatever, and I'm sure they just cleaned it up." He goes, "Oh no, don't do that. I want the original photograph." I said, "Okay, not a problem." So, hobble down the stairs, get in the car, drove back to the office. It's about a 12-minute ride. I get into the office, and my secretary said, "The president of the company wants to talk to you now." So I call him up, and I said, "Hi, Don." He goes, "What did you say to Michael?" I said, "I don't know. I just said, you know, here are the photographs, blah, blah, blah." We had a conversation about the photographs. He goes, "Well, he called Walter Yendikoff, who was the chairman of the company." He goes, "A guy named Larry Stessel came over and said that I was dirty, smelly, and stinky. And I want him fired." So I went, "And?" He goes, "Well, we're not going to fire you, but you can work on all of Michael's projects, but we don't want you to talk to him ever again." So I went, "How's that supposed to work?" He goes, "Well, just have Steve, a guy named Steve who worked alongside me." He says, "Have Steve be like the front man, but you work behind the scenes." So for the next 2 or 3 years, I had no contact with Michael Jackson until
Except you were actually putting all the
I
plans
put
together.
all the plans together. I put
putting
all the
pieces
marketing
together.
plans together. I was working with the managers prior to Frank, Ron Weiser and Freddie DeMann. We were putting together the Thriller project, and I worked with them on it, but behind the scenes. I never talked to Michael. So Ron Weisner called me up and said, come over to the office. I have the photo session. I want to go through the photo session with you for Thriller. I said, fine. So I went over to his office.
So this is like 2 years later,
This is, the...
Couple of years,
Yeah,
or sometime later.
whenever Thriller, I can't remember, when did Thriller come out? 81?
82.
82. So I go over to the office, and they had a light box, and they had these little slides, and with a loop that you could look through so you could look at the photographs. And I'm looking at the photographs, and Ron is standing next to me, and we're looking at it, we're talking about the different photos. He goes, Michael likes this one, I like this one, what do you think? And we're talking about the photos. And all of a sudden, out of my vision, I can see the Ron walks backwards, and he just turns around, he goes, and he's whispering, and he goes, Larry. And I turn around, and he goes, you know Michael. And there's Michael, and there I am, and I went, hi. He goes, oh, I know Larry. And he gives me a big hug, and he goes, how are you? I haven't seen you in such a long time. And I'm thinking,
But
this guy's memory is a little shallow.
now, you know, what it was, what happened there, so I can translate this for
Yeah,
you.
please do. I'm still wondering why I still had a job.
Michael had his own language, you know, and when he said you was smelly and stinky, he meant that if you said, man, that's smelly, he'd go, you like that, huh? You know, I mean, he had different, and Walter didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
By the time he called Walter, he was one bottle of Johnny Walker in, you know. He didn't know. So,
Not Michael, Walter.
so, I mean, because I went through that with Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
You know, they were talking two different languages.
Yep.
Right, yes, yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and I had, you know, and I was co-producing that with his wife, Barbara DeFina. This is the extended Bad video. And she came over and says, Marty doesn't want to, he didn't want to finish this. And Michael said to me a little earlier, I don't want to work with Marty. He's not listening. So I went in, I talked to Michael, and then I went and I talked to Marty, and I figured it out. You know, Michael had certain phrases that Marty didn't understand. Marty would talk to him like he was a street guy.
Yeah.
You know, like he was making Mean Streets or Goodfellas or something, you know, and he wasn't. So I became the middleman. Whatever Michael
Translate.
wanted, I translated to Marty, and then what Marty wanted, I translated to Michael, and then they fell in love.
Yeah.
It came to work, you know.
Well, and then as you moved into management with Michael, and you guys
Yeah, that
worked
was
as a
during the time.
team, and
me and Stas.
things became great.
Oh, yeah.
And what we ought to do now is go into, how did Michael approach you about management?
Well, we were having lunch at, as Larry will tell you, I used to always have a cabana at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I never went to the office. And so Michael came and,
You should all try that, by the way.
well, I always found that artists and managers prefer meeting you in a comfortable
right.
situation.
And you really weren't in the record business.
I wasn't in the record business. I was in show business. You guys were in the record business. So, that's an inside joke. So it stems from an argument I had with a guy named Frankie Rand, who works for Doc McGee. He may be out there.
Who
Ask him.
also worked with Michael.
Right.
As did, I think, Jed Hilly is here tonight, too, and another guy who dealt
That
with
was
Michael.
later on.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're having lunch, and we're overlooking the pool, watching Clive do laps. And he leans over. He leans over out of the clear blue and says, have you ever thought about managing me? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, is that something would you consider it? I said, well, Mike, I don't know. I said, look, first of all, you're a little excited and caught up in our success of Thriller right now. And I mean, I think I want to try to be president of this company. And he says, well, think about it. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll think about it, you think about it, If you still want to do it, you call me in 3 days, and then we'll take it from there. So I kind of like thought about it, and then I got busy doing so. I think I was working
And by
on
the way,
Aria
I don't know
or
if you
something.
remember this, you walked down to my office that afternoon and said, Michael just asked me to manage you.
right.
And in my genius, I said, don't go, Frank.
And then he called me up. He says, what do you think? And I went,
And then I had breakfast with Quincy.
yeah.
Then which will lead to another story. But anyway, then he called in 3 days, and then I accepted, and, that was that. Then what happened was, just to throw this in there, I got on a plane and I went to Vegas. And I met with my dear old friend, Colonel Tom Parker. And we sat down and we had dinner, and I said, Colonel, I think I'm going to manage Michael Jackson. He said, yeah, that's what I heard. I said, so what do you think? He said, nah, you should do it. Then we talked about doing publicity, what the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and why Elvis didn't do publicity. And I kind of understood it, and I said, well, I'm not going to let Michael talk to the press either, because I don't think he makes for a good interviewer. I said, I'll just make it so no interviews. Something is to be said, I'll say it, or the press department. So that was fine. I went home. And then about 4 days later, I got a letter from the colonel. I thought, wow, isn't this nice? He's probably thanking me for dinner.
He said
Because
you-
I picked up the check, and I opened it up, and it was an invoice. $25,000 for advice.
It's like one of our lawyers.
Only the colonel would do that. It was a joke, but he didn't have a shot at getting paid anyway.
Well, with that though, that Michael, I think in his vision of superstardom, because he dreamed the biggest dream, he wanted a celebrity manager. He wanted somebody who was a personality. I think, I think he was so attracted to you because you
thank
could
you.
be that for him.
And it was a real comfort factor. When I would,
Yeah, yes.
when I would see the two of them together, it was really not quite father-son, but more like an older brother. I mean, he really felt comfortable around Frank. I remember I'd go over to Frank's house in Los Angeles when Frank moved to LA, and Michael lived there half the time.
Well, he did live there for 6 months. He got into an argument with his father, had to leave his own house,
Yeah.
and moved into my guest house.
Yeah.
He was fine to have living with you. It's all the people that come with him.
Yeah.
They're the pain in the rear ends. The fans outside my gates, and the cooks and the guards, and they coming in and out of the gates. That gets a little hairy.
I remember you called me up one night. It was pouring rain. It was the worst rain. He says, come over to the house. I lived about 3 or 4 miles from Frank. He says, come over to the house. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I said, it's pouring rain. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'll talk to you tomorrow. He goes, no, come over to the house now. So, okay. So I get in the car, drive over to Frank's house. I mean, by the time I got from the car door to Frank's front door, it was soaking wet. I go in the house and walk into his den, and there's Michael. He would sit in the corner, in like a dark section of the corner. He would just sit there very quietly. He goes, and this was during the Bad record, and he says, Michael wants you to make a video for Man in the Mirror. I said, okay. I said, Michael, what's your idea? I mean, because I assumed he was going to be in it. He goes, no, I want you to make a video, and I don't want to be in it. So you come up with the idea. And I'm, I don't write these things. I mean, Dan writes these things. I don't write these things. So he kind of pointed out some ideas of what he thought the song was about, and that was it. I turned to Frank and said, so Frank, what do you think? He goes, I don't know, just do it. Okay.
Well, we wanted the 4 living presidents.
Yeah, he wanted the 4 living presidents in the video. So we went out, so I called up a good friend of mine who was an editor primarily. And
Is that for me?
yeah, it's the colonel. So we created Man in the Mirror, which was these scenes and these pictures of in the video of just terrible things that had happened in our country, leading up to the crescendo of the song, where the atomic bomb goes off, and then after that, the video has all these really good things that America really stands for, and all these wonderful things that were happening in the country, and what our potential is as a country. So I call up Frank, and it's about a week later, and I said, all right, I think we have something to show you. We have a rough cut to show you and Michael. Why don't you come on down? So it's pouring rain out. So from Frank's house to Burbank Studios, where we were editing it, was about 40 minutes. So about an hour goes by, and they show up, and they're soaking wet, and they come in, and we sit them down in front of this TV screen, which is like the size of this monitor, in this hard chair. I mean, we were in an editing bay. And Michael views the video, sees the whole thing. He doesn't move. And I turned to Frank, I turned to the editor, and I went, okay, we really messed this one up. And he turns around, and he's bawling. He's just crying. He goes, I never want to see this again. And my heart dries. Worked so hard on this. Got to start all over again. I'm under a timeline. We have to have video at MTV in a few days. And he said, that's the best thing that I've ever seen. And it just upsets me so much to see it. And I never want to see it again, but it's fantastic. Don't make any changes to it. So several months go by, and I get a phone call from Walter Yetnikoff. He goes, Pierre Cossette's going to call you. Pierre was the producer of the Grammys. He goes, Pierre's going to call you. He wants Michael on the show. I said, okay. So Pierre Cossette calls me, Michael Jackson. He'll open the show, he'll close the show, be in the middle, whatever you want. I need Michael Jackson on the show. I said, great. Called Frank. I said, Frank, Walter and Pierre want Michael on the Grammys. All right, I'll call you back. Calls me back about 10 minutes later. He goes, no, he's not going to do it. I said, why not? He goes, doesn't want to do it. He thinks he's played out on TV. He's done enough. He wants to take a step back. And Michael looked at Elvis, the Beatles in certain ways.
He thought he was overexposed.
Yeah, overexposed. So he says, no, you can do it. I said, okay. So I call up Yetnikoff and I said, Walter, Michael won't do the Grammys. He goes, no, Michael will do the Grammys and don't call me again. Boom. So I said, okay. So I called Frank and I said, well, I just had this really interesting conversation with Walter Yetnikoff. And I think Michael needs to do the Grammy Awards. And Frank said, well, he ain't going to do them. So he says, if you really want him to do it, you call him. So I said, okay. I don't have his number. He goes, well, I'll have him call you. So about an hour later, Michael calls and he goes, hi, Larry. And I said, he said, well, see, you have to understand about this the relationship I have with him. In the middle of the night in the recording studios, Frank would say to Michael, call Stessel. It'd be 3 o'clock in the morning. And he'd go, I can't, it's in the middle of the night. He goes, he's awake, don't worry about it, just call him. And he would dial the number and hand the phone to Michael. And, I'd be sleeping in bed and Michael would call up and he'd go, Larry, hi. And I'd go, hello? And he actually sounded like my sister-in-law. He had a very high-pitched voice. I say, who is this? He goes, it's Michael. I go, Michael who? He goes, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's Michael Jackson. What are you doing? And I go, well, I was reading the Bible. And he'd say, really? I said, no. Then I hand the phone to my wife. I said, hang it up when I yell, because you have to go in the other. You couldn't hang up the phone. You had to go pick up the extension, and then she would hang it up and go back to sleep. And he talked to me for hours. Anyway, so he calls me up in New York and he says, so Frank tells me you want me to do the Grammys, and I just want you to know I won't do it. I said, yeah, but Walter really wants you to do the show. Now, that was the only thing that would really kind of get to him, because Walter was kind of like his godfather or his father figure to him. So he says, all right, well, what do I have to do? So I said, well, you can do anything you want. Anything you want. The Grammys really want you on the show. He goes, I'll do it under one condition. You have a movie screen. It's at Radio City Music Hall in New York. Is you have a movie screen that drops from the ceiling. So when I'm on stage, I could see the movie screen. I said, okay, and what's on the movie screen? He goes, I want to see Man in the Mirror, because that would be the emotion. That's what I want to feel when I hit that stage. I said, you got it. So we had Radio City tricked out, and we had the movie screen come down, and sure enough, he came out, and he did a bunch of different things. He did Billie Jean, and he did Man in the Mirror, and the choir came out, like a 50-person choir. It was magnificent
Yeah, it
to
was
see this
unbelievable.
happen.
You kids should try to YouTube that. It was great.
Yeah.
But see, you put up with those calls. I did.
I know.
One time when I first managed him, about 6 weeks into it, he called me about 4 in the morning, the phone rang. And I picked it up. I said, yeah, hello. Did I wake you? No, I had to get up to answer the phone. What's up? He said, well, I have this idea. I said, okay, what is it? He gave me some crazy idea he had. And I said, uh-huh, uh-huh. He said, so what do you think? I said, I'll tell you the truth. That sounds more like a 9 o'clock in the morning idea. Not a 4 in the morning idea. And he laughed. He actually laughed, hung up. He never called me at night again.
He did it.
Well, Danny, you work, when I left Epic Records in 1991,